residents present, thank you very much for coming out on this frigid evening. And certainly we appreciate not having to go door to door to get the quorum. That's number one, so thank you. This meeting this evening is being recorded and we'll hear later on YouTube. If you have not done so already, please turn your phones off or silence them. The treasurer for this evening, if we do need a standing vote, is going to be Bella Caldera, the chair of Soul Points. Also, the chair would like to introduce the interim town administrator, Sandy Mason. Sandy, who has been our tax collector here for the last 5 years, is serving in that capacity. Please give her a round of applause. The chair almost said please give her a raise, but I didn't want to cause any coronary starting with Sandy. And let me see, if anyone would like to speak to the warrant articles this evening, and there are only 2 of them. It's going to be a little different because of the setup of this room. So please come forward. The chair will recognize you. Begin by saying, Mr. Moderator, my name is, and then please state your name and your address, and then proceed to speak to the article or the amendment that is before town meeting. Do not discuss or address your remarks to any one person. I believe at this point, just to verify for the record, Madam Clerk, Dr. Sheila Brewer, the Superintendent of Schools for the Regional School District, has requested to address town meeting, and that request has been granted. At this point, the chair will call the special town meeting to order. Please stand. Gentlemen, please remove your hats as we salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. Article 1 will see if the town will vote to raise, appropriate, or transfer of available funds the sum of $5,424,928.65 to pay its share of the Quabbin Regional School District budget for fiscal year 2023, or take any action relative thereto. This has been recommended by the Select Board and the Finance Committee. Is there a recommendation? At this point, Ms. Williams moves that the town raise and appropriate $5,241,649 to pay the town or Cumberson share of the Quabbin Regional School District budget for fiscal year 2023. Motion by Mr. Williams. Is there a second? Seconded by Ms. Young. As far as comments go, the chair is going to recognize Roger Blaine first to speak on behalf of the motion on behalf of the Select Board. Mr. Blaine.
I'd like to echo the moderator's comments that thank you for coming out and considering these 2 important warrant articles tonight. Appreciate everyone's participation. So I want to explain the motion on behalf of the Board of Selectmen. They've asked me to explain this motion. So please first note that the article, which highlights the number that was approved by the Quabbin Regional School District Committee, is the number that the school committee certified in their assessment to the town. The motion that was read by the moderator is the amount that the Select Board and the Finance Committee are recommending that the town vote on. These are 2 different numbers. So if you were to vote for the motion as it stands currently, you would be rejecting the school committee budget and approving the town's recommendation for the budget. the select board wanted to make sure that every voter here understood that as part of the motion. So quickly to summarize how the school committee budget and how the town budget works. So here's the process. The school committee votes on the Providence Regional School District side of the budget and sends certified assessments to the town for consideration. The town then presents warrant articles and the budget to you, consolidated with the municipal side at the annual town meeting. So this year at the annual town meeting, the select board and the finance committee recommended a number that was lower than what the school committee recommended. So any vote that is not what the school committee recommended is considered a rejection of their budget. So in a regional school district, under our agreement in state law, if 4 of the 5 towns in the 5-town district pass the budget, then the budget passes regardless of what the individual town votes. If 2 or more towns reject the school committee's budget, then it goes back to the school committee for their consideration. In their consideration, they can increase, they can decrease, or they can keep their assessment exactly the same. So this is what happened this year. The town meeting in June approved a figure that was less than the school committee's budget, and the budget went back to the school committee for their consideration. The school committee then made a cut to their budget and sent the certified assessments back to the town. They have 30 days to do this and they comply. The town then has up to 45 days to respond. If there is no response, then it passes automatically. So 3 of the 5 towns voted originally that the school committee's budget, they rejected the school committee's request. So that was Hardwick, New Braintree, and Hubbardston. Berry and Ocam passed the budgets. So that is what triggered the reconsideration. Tonight, Hardwick and New Braintree are voting on the budget as well, in addition to the town of Hubbardston. So what would be next? If 2 of those towns vote to approve the school committee's new number, then the budget passes, and any town that rejected the budget would have to redo their budget in order to find the numbers and find the math to make the budget work. If 2 or more of the towns vote against the budget, then it would go back to the school committee. They have 30 days to reconsider, and they can do an increase, a decrease, or keep it the same. And then the towns have 45 days after that date to respond until December 1st. On December 1st, the Commissioner of Education takes control of the budget and the finances for the district, and then prepares even next year's budget. So we're pretty close if you do the math on whether or not it could be reconsidered in time, or it's going to go to the Department of Education for them to consider the budget, assuming that it's rejected. If it passes, then there will need to be another town meeting in order to fix the budget. So what do the numbers mean? On the blue sheet that you were given is a budget process and timeline, as I just explained. And then on the 3rd page, there are 2 tables. So I would call your attention to the 2nd table. So here's the reason why the select board has voted to recommend the number that is in front of you in the motion, which is less than what the school committee is recommending to the town. So in particular, the 5th number, which is the Providence Regional School District's July revision, represents $375,278 additional dollars to the town budget. So this year, the town is estimating that all of the revenues, so that means all the taxes that the town is allowed to increase on you by law, all the money that the state has allowed for additional state aid, and our projection for local receipts, which is the licenses and the permits and everything that you pay for to interact with the town. All of that will equal $312,626. That is the estimate. So every new dollar in the town equals $312,000. The Providence Regional School District assessment is asking for $375,278, or 120% of the new revenues that the town is facing. So the recommendation of the select board is not a rejection of the needs of the school, and it's not a consideration or not consideration of what the school needs. It's a realistic view of the revenue that's available to the town. So if the budget number changes tonight or is amended, the town would have to find an additional $183,000 in order to fund this year's budget. So that could come in the form of an operational override, which would be somewhere between $50 and $500 per household, depending on the value of your house. That would also require a ballot vote and a town meeting vote in order to pass an operational override. And that number does not consider what those numbers would do for next year's budget. Or you could use one-time revenue. So one-time revenue is commonly called free cash, or you can use the town's reserve stabilization. If you were to use one-time revenue, meaning it doesn't reoccur next year, then let's say revenue next year also was $312,000. You would have to subtract the amount of one-time revenue from that new revenue, and that's what would be available to the town next year. So in the way the budget process works with the schools, Hubbardston will not see less than a 3 to 3.8% increase from the Cobham Regional School District, even if the numbers stay flat. Which means we would already not have enough revenue next year in order to fund the basic 0% change to next year's school budget. So one-time revenue would solve maybe this year's problem, but it would take away the town's ability to fund capital, and it would definitely majorly impact the town's budget next year, assuming a perfect year where the expenses did not increase. You could also do a combination of cuts and one-time revenue. So cuts of $180,000 to the town budget would equal about a third of the DPW, or a third of the police department, or a third of the fire department. Cuts at this level, even combined with one-time revenue, would mean many shifts where there's only one officer on duty, less fire coverage, especially at night and on the weekends, and less money to fund road maintenance, which is the #1 request of residents in town. So these cuts would immediately be made to those departments. Additionally, we would have to cut town hall staff and hours, which would mean when you come in to get town services, there would be more doors closed and less town services. Even at that level of cuts, you still have to use one-time revenue to get to $183,000. So to put this in perspective, all the non-union raises for the town, for all the employees, equals about $20,000. So even if you didn't give any of the town employees a raise, and you cut that out of the budget, you'd still need to find $160,000 to cut in order to get to the school's projected number. That's an overview of the municipal budget, and why the select board is recommending that you approve the number that was given at town meeting, which is a 3.8% increase over last year's assessment. I'll defer to the moderator.
Thank you, Mr. McLean. At this point, the chair would like to recognize Robin on the Finance Committee.
Sorry, I'll probably spit some more numbers out at you. My name is Joshua Lar. I currently serve as the Vice Chair of the Hubbardston Finance Committee. I am here tonight to explain why the Finance Committee recommends that the town approve the amended QRSD appropriation of $5,241,649. Though it is the amended number at this special town meeting, bear in mind this number was already overwhelmingly approved by voters at our annual town meeting on June 7th of this year. The $5,241,649 number, which I will refer to now as the original town meeting number, represents a reasonable 3.8% increase in our QRSD assessment over the previous year. To put that increase in perspective, increases in spending on general government, public safety, which includes police, fire, and ambulance, the library, the Council on Aging, and public works are all less than 3.8%. I will add that the original town meeting number also represents a full 52.9% of the total budget for Hubbardston for fiscal year 2023 dedicated to the QRSD. QRSD is currently requesting an amount of $5,424,928, which I will refer to as the current QRSD request. It represents an unsustainable 7.4% year-over-year increase and would represent an allocation of nearly 55% of Hubbardston's total budget solely to support the QRSD. I want to make it clear, we support the Quabbin Regional School District. We will continue to support the Quabbin Regional School District. We want our schools to be strong and vibrant, and we want to support them financially. In all but 2 of the last 13 years, Hubbardston has dedicated more than half of its total budget spending to the QRSD. That is a strong demonstration of our continued support. But we also want to support the other services in our town that keep Hubbardston a safe, strong, healthy, and dynamic community. And to do that, we can only afford the original town meeting number. The difference between the original town meeting number and the current QRSD request may seem small. It is only about $180,000. However, as the Finance Committee can attest to, Hubbardston already has a lean budget. Compared to other towns our size, Hubbardston spends less per capita than virtually any other town. That means the services our town provides are already delivered efficiently, and there is little room for any additional cost savings in our budget without significant cuts to services. Coming up with a difference of $180,000 in our budget will be extremely difficult and potentially very painful. Additionally, the QRSD portion of our budget will only snowball in future years if we approve the 7.4% increase. Even if we were to find a way to meet the 7.4% increase this year, what happens next year or the year after? 15 years ago, the QRSD assessment occupied about 45% of Hubbardston's total budget. Today, it potentially represents 55%. Looking in the future, what kinds of services will our town be able to provide if the QRSD assessment becomes 60 or even 65% of our total budget? The current QRSD request consumes the equivalent of 120% of all new revenue for fiscal year 2023. It effectively shrinks the rest of our budget. Limited new growth, coupled with the limitations on revenue increases, handicap our ability to continuously absorb the large year-over-year increases of the QRSD assessment request. This is a major structural problem within our budget that is coming to a head. Approval of the current QRSD request will have consequences to the rest of the budget, and it is important to understand what those consequences could be. How would we account for the extra $180,000 allocated to the school district? If the current QRSD request is approved tonight, we will need to dive back in and develop a new balanced budget reflecting this new extra allocation to QRSD. As a town, we will need another special town meeting to approve a new balanced budget this fall. So what would that balanced budget look like? Perhaps we could attempt to trim spending in other departments for services the town provides. Our snow and ice budget is approximately $240,000. Maybe we could cut that by 75% to free up $180,000. Our library budget plus the town administrator salary could be eliminated, and that would just about offset the increased funding to the QRSD. We could slash police funding by 25% or fire funding by more than 35%. We could eliminate all the funding for the Council on Aging and Veteran Services, but then still need an additional $120,000 of cuts in our budget to get to $180,000. These are the kinds of choices we will be facing. We aren't going to discover an extra $180,000 in our budget by trimming our spending on photocopier supplies, turning off the lights, or setting the thermostat lower. As I said earlier, our budget is already lean and efficient. $180,000 doesn't come from out of nowhere. It severely impacts the rest of our budget. Of course, the other option is raising revenue, increasing our local property taxes via a Proposition 2.5 override. But that is something that has historically never been palatable in Hubbardston. Based on the Massachusetts Department of Revenue Division of Local Services calculations, a 2.5 override to offset an extra $180,000 would add approximately $104 to the average single-family home tax bill. The average single-family home in Hubbardston is assessed at approximately $315,000. So each of us would pay more or less than the $104 depending on the assessed value of our home relative to that average. Unlike the debt exclusion, historically used to offset one-time costs, this increase would permanently impact property tax bills. Therefore, a vote for the current QRSD request is a tacit approval of either increased taxes or significant reduction of town services. The QRSD assessment does not exist in a vacuum. That is the reality of Hubbardston's budget. Your vote will also be needed at the next special town meeting to address these potential budgetary changes. Let me again be clear. The Finance Committee does not recommend any of these hypothetical measures I have just mentioned. We do not advocate for cuts in other portions of our budget, nor do we advocate for increased revenue via an override. We recommend the town maintain the original town meeting number for the QRSD assessment of $5,241,649 and keep its budget balanced. From a budgetary standpoint, neither assessment number is actually ideal for Hubbardston. Our entire town budget increased by only 1.9% this year. Therefore, even an increase of 3.8% that represents the original town meeting number has come at the expense of growth in other programs, services, and departments. But at least if the original town meeting number is what Hubbardston can afford, and the balanced budget we have already approved at our June annual town meeting reflects that. So why is there a disconnect between the town and the school district? The school district will say that their current budget request is only about a 2.4% increase year over year, and that certainly does seem reasonable. However, this is the QRSD's total budget increase, and it is an irrelevant number for Hubbardston's bottom line. When I sit down in a restaurant, I'm not interested in how much the price of cattle has gone up. I'm only interested in what my burger costs and what the bill is. Our cost, Hubbardston bill, will be a 7.4% increase if the current QRSD request is approved. All other numbers are merely noise. To state simply, we cannot afford the 7.4% increase without drastic cuts to town services or increased taxes for additional revenue. I urge the Quabbin Regional School District Administration and School Committee to keep in mind during future budgetary cycles that it is the assessments to each town, the restaurant bill at the end of the meal, that matters. Creating a budget involves figuring out how much one can afford first before deciding how much to spend. It is the member towns that appropriate money for the school district. Understanding what member towns can afford should be the driving factor in the development of the QRSD budget and determine how much QRSD can spend. On March 1st, the QRSD Budget Subcommittee was presented with a preliminary budget that gave 4 member towns upwards of a 10.9% increase in their assessment, with 2 towns receiving a nearly 14% increase. On March 10th, 9 days later, the school committee approved that same budget by a 13-to-1 vote. That initial budget proposal with landslide school committee approval does not demonstrate an understanding of what the member towns can afford. Double-digit increases in assessment requests are not reasonable or realistic. The majority of member towns rejected their initial assessments. If the QRSD can develop its budget within the framework of what its member towns can afford, it will greatly reduce the back-and-forth friction that currently exists between the school district and member towns. In an era of maximizing savings and operating with lean budgets, it will also minimize the additional costs member towns are forced to incur when multiple town meetings are needed to reconcile the school district's assessment requests. It will smooth the budget process for everyone. QRSD has already undertaken the work to produce 4 budgets, an initial budget and at least 3 revisions. Hubbardston is already holding its second town meeting with another likely necessary this fall. All of this extra work benefits no one but adds costs for everyone. Unaffordable assessments hurt both the school district and the member towns. The Finance Committee urges the town of Hubbardston to once again approve the amended amount of $5,241,649 tonight, just as it did at its annual town meeting 2 months ago. It is an important component of a balanced budget for the town of Hubbardston for fiscal year 2023. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lerner. At this point, the chair will recognize Superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I wrote a statement to read tonight. As was mentioned earlier, all of the towns that still have to reconsider our budget are holding town meetings this evening at 6 or 7 p.m., so I was only able to attend one. This statement is the same statement that will be read by my colleagues at the other towns, so that a consistent message, if I were able to have been there, I would have made the same statement. I do want to say that I respect the work of all of our town officials. I'm a nearly lifelong resident of the town of Barry. I graduated from the Quabbin Regional School District, and I value our rural communities, and I respect the work that town leaders do to try to balance the needs of the community and support the needs of the children who are accessing our education. This year, as was mentioned, our budget increase currently stands at 2%. That represents an overall increase to the entire school district budget of $729,061. I'm sometimes asked, what's the extra 2% that you're asking for this year going to be spent on? There isn't a simple answer to that. Each year when we build our budget, we make decisions about what we need for the upcoming school year. Sometimes we need less in one budget area and more in another. And those small increases and decreases in the 833 lines that make up our budget this year make up the overall 2% increase. I'm sure you're all sitting here thinking your budget at home has increased as well. Everything is increasing in cost. Everything is more expensive. Just to give you a couple of really concrete examples, last year, when we ordered a case of paper for our schools, we were paying $28.77 per case. This year, our bid price on paper is $68 per case. Oil to heat our buildings, last year cost $1.69 per gallon. This year, we're paying $2.90, the upcoming year, $2.90 per gallon, which we actually think is quite a bargain considering what we're probably all paying to heat, will be paying to heat our homes this winter. But still, the increase in oil costs alone is $230,037. That's almost 1/3 of the $769,000 that we're asking for overall. Also, just to point out, our buildings are aging. It's hard to believe that the building that we're sitting in now, this beautiful building, is 32 years old. Yes, it's been renovated, thanks to the support of your community. But as you know, as homeowners, the older your homes get, the more money it takes to maintain. That's just another example of why it's more costly for our school district to operate. We sometimes also hear when we build our budget that we ask for a wish list. And when we reduce the budget, it's proof that we never needed what we originally asked for. I just want to explain our budget process. When we build our budget, we start in December of the previous year. So now 8 months ago, we started to work on this budget. We do our best at that time to predict what it's going to cost to operate the school district for the upcoming school year. But truthfully, we don't know exactly what it's going to cost. Imagine at the end of June having to predict what it would cost for you to operate your own home from January to December of the following year. It would be really tough to do so. Over the next 6 months from December on, we work with our school committee and we get additional information that helps our budget predictions for costs become more and more accurate. For example, based in December when we built our budget, we predicted, based on enrollment, that we would need an additional 3rd grade teacher in Rose Lane Elementary School. As we continue to monitor enrollment over the course of the next several months, we realized we didn't need that new teacher. At that time, when our school committee was reconsidering our budget, we took that cost of that teacher out. I can give you example after example of decisions that we make, and that's the bulk of our budget reductions. We have reduced the budget over $1.3 million since we first built it. Many of those cuts are due to increased accuracy in the numbers that we use to build the budget. It is true that your community is devoting more than 50% of their general fund budget to education. But they're not alone. It's not necessarily a good thing, but almost half the communities, I think all or more of the general fund budget to education. It has to do with the way our state funds education, to be honest, and many other factors, but that's one of the biggest factors. From the start, our budget is built for exactly what we believe your children need, not a penny more. Many of the cuts, as I said, along the way, are based on new information that allows us to be more accurate in our prediction of actual costs. Another question that we hear is, why is the increased cost to the town for this budget not 2%, but as was mentioned by Mr. Lerner, quite a bit more? There isn't a simple answer to that either. I wish there was. But a simplified explanation is that each town's assessment is determined by 3 factors. One of those factors is how much the school budget increase. The other factors are a number that's called required local contribution. That number is determined by the state of Massachusetts. And what makes that number up is 2 things: your assessed property value in your community and your per capita income. The school district does not have any control over those factors. Your town leaders don't have any control over those factors. The other factor that affects how much your town has to pay is the enrollment. If your town's enrollment in our school district increases relative to the other towns, you have to pay a bigger percentage of the budget. That's how our regional agreement is written. You actually had almost an 11.5% increase in students enrolled in our district this year. That's another reason why your assessment has increased to the level that it has. Bear with me, I just have a few more comments. I just wanted to put our budget increase in perspective for you. I researched the budget increases of area school districts. These are districts that touch our district geographically. All of them are significantly higher than our 2%. The Quabog Regional School District, this is staggering, increased 17.5%. That's way off the charts. North Brookfield's increases 3.99%, Ware 3.57%. Closer to home, Narragansett, Templeton and Phillipston 4.44%. Ashburnham Westminster 4.14%, Gardner 8%, Athol Royalston 7.6%, Wachusett 3.7%, R.C. Mahar 3.91%. In Montechusett Regional Vocational Technical School, which is the other regional school district that Hubbardston belongs to, their budget increased 7.66%. That budget was approved at your annual town meeting in June. We try to do everything that we can to help our member communities. In Hubbardston, we cover the cost of trash removal for your town administrative offices, and we cover the cost for well testing and maintenance of the water supply for your town complex. We effectively worked in concert with your town officials to obtain MSBA funding for the new roof on this building last year, and we worked very cooperatively with your town officials to manage and oversee that project. Additionally, admittedly, these are small things, but we're committed to increasing collaboration and collaborative efforts so that the school district and the communities can both benefit from our efforts. We do occasionally get some additional money from the state. We have been lucky in the last 4 years to get rural schools funding. We've used all of that, virtually all of that money to pay for capital projects on the middle high school building repairs that were essential. Without that funding would have fallen on the towns. The towns would have had to pay their portion of that. That resulted in a savings of $172,551 for the town of Hubbardston. And we also try to save money whenever we can. We worked very hard to reduce our costs in certain areas. We've actually had significant savings in the last few years because we've been able to bring many, many students back to our school district from out-of-district placements. That's due to the efforts of our special educators in our district and our special education team. Those children are now educated in our district with their peers in their hometowns, in our home district, and it's a better experience for them, and it also saves us money. We've also been able to reduce the number of school choice students who are going out of our district by 42% over the last 2 years. That is also resulting in a significant savings for our communities and our district. We've gotten $1.7 million worth of grants this year, and we use those grants in a variety of ways to build programs to support what your children need. We have 59 students in summer camp, one entirely free this summer through a grant, and we actually paid some of our high school students to work with those students so they were able to be employed in their hometowns, working in our school district. My final thought for tonight. I am extraordinarily proud of the education that the Cooperative Regional School District provides for the 516 students in your community who attend our schools. During the pandemic, we were one of only a handful of the 320 school districts in the state that had our elementary schools open every single day for our elementary students. We were one of the first school districts to bring our high school students back to in-person learning from hybrid learning. We did not close the doors of one of our schools for 1 day during a COVID outbreak. I'm not sure any other school district in the state of Massachusetts can make that statement. Why am I talking about this now? That happened in the past. The reason I'm talking about it now is to illustrate the dedication and commitment to the success of the children of your community that is shown by every single person who is employed by the Cooperative Regional School District. Your children deserve a high-quality education. I believe it's important to your community to have strong schools. I believe what we did during the pandemic is indicative of the efforts that we put forth every day, pandemic or no pandemic, to make sure that the children of your community reach their goals and are prepared for their future. Your school district should be a source of pride for your town. We are responsible stewards of the finances that we receive. And I ask for your vote in support of our school district budget this evening to ensure that your children have a high-quality education for your community. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Madam Superintendent. At this point, the chair will recognize discussion from the floor. Sir.
Mr. Moderator.
Name and address, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Tim Hawley, 35 Mount Jefferson Road. I propose amending the motion on the floor to appropriate $5,424,928.65 to meet the revised district budget request. I studied the district budget request. I even called the district to clarify some of the things in their budget. And there are good reasons why the district has proposed the budget. So, maybe a second before I proceed.
Matter of fact, sir, you'll go. Thank you. So Mr. Harry has moved to amend the article by reinserting the original amount proposed by the Cooperative Regional School District of $5,424,928.65. Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Duly seconded. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. As I said, I've studied the budget quite a bit, and there are good reasons why the budget is what it is, and why it's higher than last year. In 2020 and 2021, the school district was able to reduce spending and save money because of COVID, and they incorporated those savings into the budget requests for the 2 succeeding years. The overall district budget has only increased by 2% from last year, and many school districts, as the superintendent pointed out, have had increases of 3, 4, 8, even up to 17%. If we take a longer view and go back before COVID and compare this budget request to 2020, there's only a 4% increase over those 3 years, even though inflation over those 3 years has been 12%. For the upcoming year, there will be an 11% increase in the number of students from Hubbardston, and so our contribution should go up. We have a number of new houses in town, and the value of all taxable property in town, as well as the income of all of us, have each increased, and those increases also contribute to Hubbardston's share of the cost increasing. The education of our children is one of the most important investments we can make for our own future. The added amount in this amendment would only add $27 to the quarterly tax bill of a piece of property that was valued at $300,000. I think we can afford it without cutting any other programs. And finally, we are searching for a new town administrator. What kind of message are we sending to prospective candidates if we don't support our schools? Thank you.
For the sake of transparency and so that everyone is following along with this, so the motion to amend is referred to as a subsidiary motion. According to Section 18 of the town bylaws, debate on such subsidiary motions shall be limited to 10 minutes, and no person shall speak for more than 3 minutes. So you were well, where you go? Anyway, okay. So you were well under the 3 minutes, sir, so you're all set with that. But just FYI, as far as anyone else who would like to address the amendment. Again, discussion is on the amendment. Mr. Monroe. Carrying an automatic second with voice.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Christopher Road, Grimes Road. I wanted to come up and comment on the amendment. And ultimately, we run a really efficient town. You can look at the numbers. All of our people are paid in the bottom quarter percentile, everyone. And in terms of finding a new town administrator, we're going to have a lot of trouble with that because we pay far less than everyone else. It makes it really difficult to attract and keep talent. It's tough to find the money to pay for those people. We need good people in our local government, not just in the school system. And as far as the overall constraint, we have a problem as a town. Because 43% of our town is owned by the state. Before that, they pay nothing. So we have to run a government over an entire town with only tax revenue from half of it. Now, the state does pay pilot money, but they pay about $600,000, whereas that half of the town should be paying about $7 million in tax revenue. So we have an economic constraint that's really hard to get around. And honestly, from my perspective, we can't get around this unless we make really large policy decisions as a town and as a regional school system. This isn't about tonight. This is about the next 3 years' budgets. And it's a house of cards. It's going to be real tough to move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Monroe. For the record, that was minute 10. So, at this point,
my name is Mark Wigler, 5 Cruz Road. I had 2 children who went to this school. I'm very proud of this particular school district. The fact of the matter is, what Ms. Muir said, 2.05% increase over last year. As you take a look, it really is a statewide problem. State aid, used to be over 60% for the school districts. It's now hovers around 50%. You had a significant reduction in the aid. Transportation is supposed to fund 100%. I think this year they may be at 85%, and there have been years when they've been down to 60 or 70%. I took a look today just to see how expenditures stack up for the Department of Education, the statewide Department of Education numbers. The average expenditure is $17,500 per pupil statewide. We average $16,000. Not only are the supply issues evidenced by the cost of paper, as Ms. Muir stated, we have significant supply chain issues just keeping the cafeteria in food on a regular basis. Enrollment is up 128 students in the district. I think the number was 59 in others. What the key to me is, you heard Ms. Muir say, some other school districts in the area, up 10% or 14%. And that's not to the towns, that's actually to the actual district increases. Well, we have 300 students get school choice into our district because of the education. Many of them from the towns that had the 14 and 15% increases that was noted by Ms. Muir. I know that we have a number of students from Narragansett, we have a few from Wachusett, we have a lot from North Brookfield, a significant number from Ware. That shows you that we do actually have an excellent school district. One of the concerns that was brought up by parents at many of the Zoom meetings, because as we went through COVID, we had a lot of Zoom meetings, many parents were on board. When I talk to folks in town, I think many of you need to realize that the role of public schools is significantly expanded. No longer is it just your education. It's social and emotional needs, a very challenging issue. As you see, throughout the country, it's an issue, not just here in Massachusetts. Additional need for school counselors, psychologists, with an increased role in keeping an eye on students, making sure that your students are learning in a progressive manner throughout the course of the year. Many parents also mentioned we had put in the original budget a number of aids, both regular and special education aids. Parents were concerned about our ability to deal with potential COVID learning losses. They felt that even though we did a great job, we kept the school district open throughout the entire COVID experience, that due to the masking and the social distancing and some of their challenges, that their students fell behind.
Thank you, Mr. Whitman.
Thank you.
Further discussion on the amendment, ladies and gentlemen. Further discussion on the amendment. Roll.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Heather Monroe, 59 Grimes Road. So we've heard a bunch of things tonight, and I think it's important just to go back to the earlier piece, just to make sure everyone understands what decisions they're making this evening. Ultimately, this is up to all of us. That's why we're all here. This is our opportunity at town meeting to have input into how we operate our government and what our priorities are, what we expend money on, and what we don't expend money on. As our outgoing town administrator Ryan had mentioned earlier, one of the problems with increasing funds substantially is that we have to make hard decisions and make cuts. And I understand everything that was said, how important education is and how these additional needs for social needs of the students and additional support after COVID, all of those pieces, and how it's so hard to understand and anticipate the costs coming ahead of us. But at the same time, we still have to remember that we're operating for the town, and we have to understand that we're going to have to make substantial cuts. Even if we were able to get through this year with balancing things so that the cuts weren't as bad, we still have the potential. We're going to have less police officers. We're going to have less firefighters. We're going to have less people in town hall to provide town services. And we have to balance the piece. As it's previously stated by Ryan's statement and the Finance Committee, we all are hugely in support of education in our schools. We just need a different process. The process that's been happening over the past couple of years, it's not working. When we go to build a budget on our end, as much as we'd love to say we need 2 more police officers, we need a new DPW, or a fire, public safety building, or we need this, or we need that, we also have to remember that we have limited income coming in, and we have to make the best decisions we can based on the money we have. Same thing in all of us at home. We have things that we'd love to do, we have things that we need to do, but ultimately we know that we have to balance on how much income we have coming in to our pockets at the end of the day. So it's a hard decision. I know it's going to stink for all of us, whatever we make, but whatever decision is made tonight, it's going to come back up again in a couple months. Whether it's the school takes the budget back and we have to make another decision based on how those other 2 towns voted, there's another town that votes no, and we vote no, then it goes back to them again. If we vote yes, and another town votes yes, then what's going to happen? We come back and we have to make those harder decisions, but we ultimately need to figure out what direction we're going in, and that's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Marbury.
Thank you, Ms. Monroe. 2 minutes 46. At this point, we have approximately 30 seconds left as far as debate on the amendment. Is there anyone who would like to make their point before?
Sorry, my name is Joshua Warner. I live on my street. Earlier was mentioned about Zoom meetings during COVID. I've taken a look at the QRSD budget, and as the budget stands, $51,215 are spent on conference and travel. So I'm wondering if there's any room on the QRSD side to reduce that cost. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Warner. Is there anyone else who would like to address town meeting on the amendment? Previous question has been moved. Is there a second? And duly seconded. All in favor of the previous question signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Let's do end debate, ladies and gentlemen. Those opposed say nay. The ayes do have the previous question has been called. All in favor of the amendment? The amendment again by Mr. Haley is to strike the motion, the amount made by Mr. Williams' motion, and to reinsert the original amount that was advanced by the Quabbin Regional School District, $5,424,928.65. Correct, sir? Correct. All those in favor of the amendment, please raise your card. And so here, if you get ready, just in case, thank you. Thank you. Please lower your cards. Those opposed, please raise your cards. And the chair is in doubt. The chair is in doubt. Please lower your cards, and we're going to take a recorded vote. Those in favor of the amendment, please signify by raising your cards, and please keep your cards raised. And the chair has requested the town clerk to also serve as a deputized counter. Ms. Caldero, you have your number. If you could please approach the chair with that. please lower your cards. Those opposed, please signify by raising your cards. Thank you. Thank you. Please lower your cards. The result of the vote is as follows. The ayes are 66, the nays are 51, and the amendment passes. Is there any further discussion on the motion as amended? Mr. Walker.
Peter Walker, 25 Muskogee. Where are we going to get the money?
Thank you. Dr. Stucker.
Michael Stouter, 22 Navigton Drive. I sat up here for a decade plus, so trust me, they're doing the best they can. There is no money in this town. The budget's lean, the school district's doing a good job. There's no shenanigans here. The problem is, and we forecasted this years ago, was that there's a structural deficit between the revenue and the expected expenses. We had an outside firm come in probably, I don't remember anymore, 5, 6, 7 years ago. That said, in 10 years, we'd be almost $1 million in the hole between revenue and expenses. So this is not a surprise. This is probably the first inkling that we have that every year is going to be this way. So when you ask where are we going to get the money from, I mean, it's extremely unpopular. I'm probably going to get punched on the way out of here, but the only way out of this is a 2.5 override for the town, because next year and the year after and the year after, whether it's schools, whether it's fire, whether it's police, it's not going away. That structural deficit that we have between expenses and the possible revenue we can get in town because of the limitations on our growth, the zoning, the fact that the state owns half the land, those structural problems don't go away. So, yeah, this year's about the school and where are we going to get the money. Next year's going to be how we're going to fund the police. Next year's going to be the school and fire. So, we as a town, as everybody up here, need to come together, like you said, have your policy, decisions. We knew this 5, 6 years ago. The only way out of this is either massive growth or we have to raise more funds through taxes.
Anyone who would like to address town meeting? The chair sees none. All in favor of the motion as amended for Article 1, please signify by raising your cards. Okay, so again, so Article 1 is going to be the school budget, and it is at the original amount that had been proposed by the Quabbin Regional School District of $5,424,928.65. Okay, so that is what you're going to be voting on, the motion as amended. All in favor, please signify by raising your cards. Thank you. State your point of order. Stand up, please.
I would really like a good explanation.
Absolutely. Thank you. The motion before town meeting is Article 1. Article 1, the original sum has been the one that had been proposed by the Quabbin Regional School District for $5,424,928.65. Mr. Williams, on behalf of the Select Board, had made a motion, he had moved that the amount of $5,241,649 be the amount approved by this special town meeting. On an amendment that was proposed and duly debated, the amendment prevailed, and the amendment is the original amount that had been proposed by the Quabbin Regional School District of $5,424,928.65. If anyone has any questions, the chair is more than willing to attempt to explain it, but that is what you're voting on. So it's not the original motion that Mr. Williams has made, it is as amended. That was amended by Mr. Halley and seconded by several others. Any questions as far as what you are going to be voting on? So you're voting to approve Article 1 with the amended amount, which is the original amount that had been proposed by Quabbin Regional School District. Mr. Halley?
If I could make one clarification, Mr. Moderator. It is, the amount we're voting on is the amount that the school district has requested after we voted not to fund the full amount in June. So it's not quite the original amount. It's been reduced by, I don't know how much.
Revised post.
So it's the revised request from the school district. Thank you.
No, thank you, sir. Any other questions? All in favor, please signify by raising your cards. Thank you. Please. Those opposed, please signify by raising your cards. And the article passes. The next article before the special town meeting is Article 2, to see if the town will vote to authorize payment of a prior fiscal year invoice as follows. The vendor is Brittany Blaney Anderson. The description is technology consultant. The invoice number is H99. The amount is $5,180. And to meet that appropriation, to transfer $5,180 from the PEG Access Reserve Fund or take any action relative thereof. The Select Board recommends. Finance Committee? Mr. Leonard? We don't have a quorum, so there is no recommendation by the Finance Committee. Thank you, Mr. Leonard. Motion made. Ms. Young moves that the town votes to authorize payment of a prior fiscal year invoice as follows. Brittany Blaney Anderson, technology consultant, invoice H99. The amount $5,180. And to meet that appropriation, transfer $5,180 from the PEG Access Reserve Fund or take any action relative thereof. Is there a second? Seconded by Ms. Monroe. Recommended by the Select Board. Is there any discussion on the motion? And the chair hears none. All in favor, please signify by raising your cards. Thank you. Those opposed, please signify by raising your cards. And the article passes unanimously. Thank you. At this point, the chair of the Select Board, Mr. Williams, has asked to address the town meeting briefly. So before we adjourn, the chair is going to recognize Mr. Williams. Mr. Williams.
Thank you. Most of you probably know, but
those of you who don't, we're losing our excellent town administrator, Ryan McLean. They say all good things must come to an end. Speaking for myself, and I'm sure many others in town who have worked with you, got to know you these past 4 years, your staff, select boards, department heads, committees, any and all citizens who have met you. Selfishly, I wish you were a little less good. Your professionalism, leadership, organizational, and administrative abilities are second to none. The respect you show to everyone who either works for you or has dealings with you is another great strength of yours. You were never a TA from Dunstable hired by us to come to the office from 8 to 5 and then go home. You became one of us, completely vested in our town, visible with your family at our fairs, races, marching in our parades, all of the above, just a nice guy all around. In your 4 years here, you have righted our ship. You've improved our DPW, police, fire departments, and kept this town afloat, all with very limited resources at your disposal. Speaking as a member of the select board who helped in hiring with you, and who has worked with you, learned from you, seen you grow into the great TA that you are, has been inspiring and an honor to have taken this trip with you. On behalf of the entire town of Hubbardston, we thank you. We wish you and your family well. Also, we wish you success, though we know you will get that without our wishes. Finally, as you go to Carlisle, I hope you will find a little spot in your heart of good memories for your friends in Hubbardston. Because I can assure you, Hubbardston will always have a very big place in our hearts for one Ryan McLean, one of our own. Be well and be safe. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Last hand of the apple. Here we go.
This is what I wanted to do. And Hubbardston was the only town that took a chance on me, this board, and I hope I lived up to what they needed. It's been an honor to share my family with you and my time. And if I could stay here, I truly would. But my wife wins, you guys lose. It's been a tremendous honor. If I could say anything before I go, the staff here in Hubbardston is second to none. The team does a million things with a couple cents. And without them, this town would be lost. And it's no exaggeration to say that you pay them to do a certain thing, and they do more. And if they didn't do more, this town would close. And there would be no services, no great parks. All the things that Hubbardston is known for wouldn't exist without them. So take care of my staff for me, and thank you for everybody. Appreciate it.
The time is 8:15. The chair declares this special town meeting adjourned.